Welcome to the latest edition of I-24 News. I'm Nicole Zedek with the top stories here in Israel and the region. Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi is believed to be dead after rescue teams were finally able to locate his crashed helicopter after an hours-long search and rescue mission. Tasnim State News Agency officially says Raisi was murdered. Initial images of the crash site show the charred helicopter wrecked in a steep and rocky area near the East Azerbaijan province. Raisi was traveling with Foreign Minister Hossein Amirabdollahian and several others when their helicopter reportedly crashed due to bad weather conditions, which also complicated the overnight rescue mission. Now, if confirmed dead, Raisi's loss comes at one of the most dangerous times for Israel's relations, or really lack thereof, with Iran, following last month's massive drone and missile attack from Tehran. Well, for more on exactly what all of this means, I'm joined in studio now by our I-24 News senior correspondent Bianca Zanini, as well as our Robert Swift. Robert, let's begin with just the latest details that we know at this hour about everything that is unfolding with the Iranian president.
So at the minute, as you can see from the footage there, the crash looks extremely severe, no sign of life from anybody on board. The weather conditions, not only did they likely contribute to the crash of the aircraft, but they also severely hampered the rescue efforts. That's why it took so long for this news to be confirmed, from the point where the helicopter, where contact was lost with the helicopter, to the point where that we're just at now, where the president's death is being confirmed.
We're looking at something like 16 hours at this point.
But that in itself is not totally unusual in such a mountainous area, and when the weather's severe, that's partly to be expected.
And when you look at these images also, you can barely even see because of these weather conditions.
Not just that, but you can also see from the crash footage, it appears that the main body of the helicopter is mostly destroyed. The tail is the part which we can see in the footage, the part that remained, but the actual main body of it appears to have been either broken up on impact or burned and been spread across the areas, it appears.
Robert, Bianca, stay with us, but I want to bring in another guest as well. We're joined by Iran lecturer at Reichman University, Dr. Meir Javedanfar. Dr. Javedanfar, thanks for being with us this morning. I want to begin by talking about what exactly this loss means for Iran. This is a country that prides itself in predictability and control. And so what exactly would this mean?
Well, it means that they're going to have to go through the whole process of electing yet another president who is probably going to be as unpopular as President Raisi. Elections in Iran used to be a process where the regime used it to increase its own legitimacy. But since the end of Mr. Rouhani's presidency in 2021, we saw Raisi, who was basically run in a one-man race as president, and the turnout was the lowest in Iran's post-revolution history for presidential elections. And recently we saw the parliamentary elections, and the participation rates were historically low as well. So now the regime is going to have to, within the next 50 days, hold another election, which probably means even lower participation, a bigger hit to the regime's legitimacy, because Raisi was not a very popular or capable figure or a bureaucrat. And I really can't see anybody who's going to do better than him.
Dr. Javedanfar, stay with us, but I want to quickly bring our viewers up to speed on exactly who Raisi was. Let's take a closer look at the profile of the Iranian president right now.
Born in 1960, Ebrahim Raisi went from being a young cleric to the Islamic Republic's leader in 2021, and has been close to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Raisi started his career in the judiciary, moving up quickly. In the 1980s, he was involved in the controversial mass executions of political prisoners, drawing international criticism. By 2019, he became the head of Iran's judiciary, leading anti-corruption efforts that gained him support. In 2021, Raisi ran for president, promising to defend Islamic values and help the poor. His win strengthened the conservative hold on power, although many voters were dissatisfied and the turnout was low. Internationally, Raisi has stood firm against the West and its demands, especially concerning Iran's nuclear program. He has pushed for lifting sanctions and building stronger relationships with countries like Russia and China. At home, Raisi has faced major challenges like a struggling economy and nationwide protests sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini, while she was in custody of the country's morality police for allegedly wearing her hijab improperly. His government's tough response to the protests led to the death of hundreds and caused more division among Iranians, as well as increased international criticism.
So now we have a little bit more information on exactly who Ebrahim Raisi is or was, but Bianca, I want to come back here in studio. Let's talk about what this truly means, I guess, domestically and internationally for Iran from their perspective right now.
Right, so this is a very dramatic development in a time of conflict. It's the president and the foreign minister in the helicopter. That said, I mean, President Raisi was more of an implementer of decisions that were made by the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, when it comes to war and foreign policy in particular. He was a man that was very important in Iran for decades before he became president, and he was believed to be the man set to replace Ayatollah Khamenei once he passes. So he was expected to have many years ahead of him as an important figure. So his death right now leaves a major hole, both when it comes to the current political landscape. I mean, according to Iran's constitution, there needs to be there needs to be an election within 50 days. The deputy will be taking over until then. It leaves a big hole who is going to replace him. It also leaves a big hole who is going to potentially replace Ayatollah Khamenei after him. So there's going to be very likely a focus on the domestic upheaval, what is going on in the political landscape. That said, because he wasn't the main decision maker, because he wasn't the main guy, the de facto leader of Iran, the policies are unlikely to change much. What we can expect to see is a continuation, perhaps a shift of focus for a while. That is certainly what many people in Israel are hoping for, since this Cold War that's been going on, or this simmering war that's been going on between Israel and Iran for so long, has been escalating in recent months. So this could be a breather for Israel. It's not like Israel isn't dealing with enough on other fronts right now. That said, I mean, really on long term, it's unlikely that much will change. It is important, though, to mention that Raisi has been one of the absolute worst presidents for Israeli interests. Ever. I mean, you can't downplay this. I mean, this man was domestically, he was the head of one of the committees that killed thousands of political prisoners. He was a hardliner when it came to international politics, domestic politics, religion, and aggression in the Middle East and expansion of Iran's interests in the Middle East. So absolutely one of the worst presidents for Israeli interests, for sure.
Certainly. You bring up an interesting point then, who's going to fill that void? Dr. Javedanfar, I want to come back to you because, as Bianca so correctly noted, Raisi was not good when it comes to Israel-Iran relations, if we can even formulate them as such a thing. So any of the potential people that could fill his void, could it possibly be better for Israel, or is it really going to maintain this quote-unquote status quo?
He wasn't much of a player in terms of Iranian foreign policy. He was mostly parroting the regime's hard line. He didn't have that much of an influence. His background was most in the judiciary. He was known as the butcher because he's sentenced to death. He was part of the team that sentenced to death somewhere between 3,000 to 30,000 Iranians in the late 80s. He did not have a security background. He wasn't a member of the IRGC or the intelligence apparatus. He was not a bureaucrat before. That's why the economy did so badly under his tenure. The president, one of the few areas where the president does have influence, relative influence, is the economy. And the average inflation rate under Raisi's 3 years tenure until he was killed was the highest since in the 1930s. So it's not going to change. So he wasn't a very good president in terms of his performance, and it's not going to change much. It's not going to leave much of a hole. And President Ahmadinejad was far worse than Raisi when he came to the state of Israel in terms of his rhetoric. To his credit, at least you could say Raisi didn't deny the Holocaust. This is how low the Iranian politicians go, really, these days. But his death is the only area where we could see maybe some impact is if he was a candidate for Khamenei's replacement. The truth is that this is a top secret issue inside Iran, but Iranian researchers outside, like myself, have speculated that he could have been one of the possible contenders.
Well, and so then if he is no longer one of the possible contenders, one of the other possible contenders is Khamenei's son. And that also sparks possibly some fears of a hereditary succession in Iran. Is that something that internal Iranians are possibly concerned of?
To be honest with you, this would be the first time that an Iranian leader, a religious leader, appoints his own son as a successor. This would look bad. It wouldn't lead to regime overthrow, but this would look bad for two reasons. Number one, the last time Shia leader appointed his own son and his own successor, or a son was a successor to a Shia leader, was during the time of the 12 imams of the Shia, soon after the passing of Imam Ali, who started the Shia process. Ayatollah Khamenei is not a real Ayatollah in the first place. So for him to go and appoint his own son would indicate that he sees himself as somebody as a successor of the continuation of the Shia imamate, and he believes that he's so strong and so his level of sanctity is so high that he can appoint his own son. So religiously, it would not look good. But also, we have to remember that one of the reasons why there was a revolution in Iran in '79 was because they wanted to stop the monarchy. The monarchy system was the Reza Shah, the founder of the Pahlavi, was followed by his son Mohammad Reza, and then his son Reza was supposed to be his successor. And the revolution said, what is this that they have this hereditary system? You cannot run a country through a hereditary system, and that was one of the reasons why there was a revolution. So for now, for the regime to go and appoint Mujtaba, again, that would be problematic, but it would not lead to regime overthrow. As controversial and as bad as it would look with Mujtaba at the helm, the regime is far too strong for it to be overthrown.
I want to come back in studio now, Bianca. As we're on air, we're getting more news about the international reactions right now. So what are we hearing the different entities saying?
Right, so far we're hearing reactions from Iraq, sending condolences, India, Hamas, and Pakistan declaring 1 day of mourning. It'll be interesting to see the reaction of Western leaders. I mean, this is a man who has stood behind the first direct attack on Israel. He has really led the push for more radicalization in the Middle East, more expansion, more aggression. He has supported Russia in the war against Ukraine and Hamas, and this is a very controversial figure. Also domestically, the reactions are interesting. There are, of course, unconfirmed, but on social media, several videos of Iranians celebrating. This man was, let's say controversial figure back
Certainly.
home as well. But again, I mean, we can talk about which leader has been the worst. I mean, it won't lead to anything, but it has been an escalation between Israel and Iran in these past months, and of course because of the war in Gaza as well, and it has been happening under his presidency, under his leadership. So we'll see which direction the replacement could take this relationship in, or lack thereof, as you say.
Lack thereof, certainly. The question on so many people's minds right now is, how does this happen in the first place? Robert, it's 2024. The president, the foreign minister, both traveling in what we're now learning, the helicopter. This is not new technology. This was a pretty old helicopter that these two Iranian officials were traveling in together.
So yeah, it was a Bell 212 helicopter, which our audience would probably be most familiar with this type of helicopter, as it was the civilian variant of the Huey helicopter made famous by the Vietnam War. So it is an old machine. And Iran does have a very aging fleet. It flies a lot of aircraft which date back to the regime of the Shah. It actually flies Western aircraft from 40, 50 years ago. However, we don't have specific details about this helicopter. It was a civilian variant of the Huey. And this helicopter is used by various governments and state agencies around the world, including like the US Coast Guard, I believe. So the specifics of the helicopter we don't know, but Iran's fleet in general is not well stocked, you could say. Just a little bit of additional information that's just come in. Some of the Iranian state media is reporting that all of the bodies have been retrieved from the crash site now.
So this likely, as we're getting more and more confirmation that the president and the foreign minister also killed in this crash. So we've talked more about Raisi, but Dr. Javedanfar, what about the fact the foreign minister also killed in this crash? What type of a vacuum does that possibly lead in the regional politics right now?
First of all, your viewers should know that there's pandemonium on Iranian social media. People are celebrating like it's the Iranian version of the Carnival in Brazil online. It's unbelievable the amount of joy. You see videos, people honking their horn last night, the car, fireworks, people indoors. It's just unbelievable how happy Iranians are, and it tells you about the popularity of Mr. Raisi. In terms of Mr. Abdullahian, he was very close to Hassan Nasrallah, the Hezbollah chief. According to his own accounts, Mr. Abdullahian's account, used to stay up at night, having like 5 or 6 hour conversations with Nasrallah before he became foreign minister. Apparently, he speaks Arabic as well. He was very close to the Iranian security establishment and their impact on the and their relations with the different proxies in the region, again, especially Hezbollah. And in terms of somebody who was close to the security services and somebody with his background, he was a security-oriented foreign minister. He wasn't a diplomatic-oriented foreign minister. Again, his impact was not that big. Today, the most of the foreign policy of the regime is set by the security, from the security circles. That's where the foreign policy comes from. Will it be difficult to replace him? Again, I don't believe so. But I think it's the process of choosing another president. In another 50 days, I think that's 9th of July. They're going to have another president. People are going to it's going to turn into a laughing stock, the whole presidential campaign, because the regime is so corrupt. Some people are saying that the Speaker of the Parliament, Ghalibaf, could be elected as the next president. He's well known for being corrupt. So this is really not good cascade of bad news for the regime, but don't expect it to dent the regime's stability.
It will certainly be interesting to see how this all unfolds. Dr. Javedanfar, thank you so much for your insight into exactly what is happening with the latest developments.